Hello and welcome to the Night Drive podcast, my friends, where I share with you the most terrifying and disturbing stories that I have collected from the dark corners of the internet. Stories that will make you shiver and make you question your sanity. Stories that will make you never want to drive alone at night again. Tonight's story is called The Deer. It is about a man who hits an animal on a deserted road and decides to check on it, but finds something much more horrifying than a dead creature. Something that will change his life forever. Something that will make him wish he was dead. Are you ready to hear the story? Then buckle up, turn off the lights, and let's begin. It was a cold and rainy night, and I was driving home from a late-night shift at the factory. I was tired and bored, and eager to get home and see my wife. I had been working overtime for the last few weeks, and I barely had any time to spend with her. I missed her, and I wanted to surprise her with some flowers and chocolates that I had bought on my way. I was driving on a long and lonely road that cut through the woods. There were no other cars, no houses, no lights, no signs of civilization. It was just me and the road and the trees. It was peaceful and quiet and relaxing. But then, everything changed. As I was driving, I saw something dart across the road. It was dark, and I couldn't see what it was. It looked like a large animal, maybe a deer, or a moose, or a bear. I slammed on the brakes, but it was too late. I heard a thud and felt a bump. I had hit something. I got out of my car and grabbed a flashlight. I walked towards the spot where I had hit the animal. I hoped it was not a dog, or a cat, or something worse. I shone the light on the road and saw a furry shape. It was a deer. I felt a pang of guilt and sadness. I loved animals, and I hated to hurt them. I walked closer to the deer, hoping it was still alive. Maybe I could help it, or at least put it out of its misery. But as I got closer, I realized that something was wrong. The deer was not moving or breathing. It was dead. But that was not the worst part. The worst part was it was not a deer. It looked like a deer, but it was not. It had horns and hooves and fur, but it also had something else, something that made me scream. It had a human face. It had a human face, and it looked like me. What was this thing? How did it exist? Why did it look like me? I had so many questions, but no answers. I was terrified and confused. I dropped the flashlight and stumbled back. I ran back to my car, hoping to get away from this horror. But as I got in, I saw that the car was damaged. The front bumper was dented, and the hood was smashed. The engine was smoking and leaking fluid. The car was totaled. I looked around and saw that I was in the middle of nowhere. There were no houses, no lights, no signs of civilization. I was alone with this thing. I reached for my phone, hoping to call for help. But as I did, I saw that the phone was dead. The battery had run out. I had no way to contact anyone. I was trapped. I panicked and started to cry. I didn't know what to do. I felt helpless and hopeless. I was doomed. But then, I heard a noise. It was a low growl coming from behind me. I turned around and saw another shape. It was another deer. But it was not a deer. It had a human face. And it looked like my wife. It had her eyes, her nose, her mouth. It was a twisted version of her, a grotesque hybrid of woman and beast. It was a nightmare. It was not alone. There were more of them. They came out of the woods, one by one. They were all deer, with human faces, and they all looked like people I knew. They looked like my friends, my family, my co-workers. They looked like people I loved and hated and envied and admired. They looked like people I had met and forgotten and remembered. They looked like people I had lived with and worked with and played with. They looked like me. They surrounded my car and stared at me. They had no expression, no emotion. They were silent and still. They were waiting. They were waiting for me. They wanted me. They wanted to make me one of them. They wanted to make me a deer. I screamed as they closed in on me. They smashed the windows and reached for me. They dragged me out of the car and threw me on the ground. They started to bite me and scratch me and tear me. They laughed as they changed me. I felt the pain and the horror and the madness. I knew I was going to die, and I knew I was going to become them. But then, I saw a light. It was a car. It was coming towards me. It was a miracle. It was my salvation. The driver saw me and the deer. He saw the blood and the carnage. He saw the terror and the insanity. He stopped the car and got out. He had a gun. He fired the gun and the deer fell. He fired again and again and again. He killed them all. He ran towards me and lifted me up. He put me in his car and drove me away. He saved me. He saved me. But he was too late. I was alive. I had survived. But I was not the same. I was changed. I was transformed. I was mutated. I had horns and hooves and fur. I had a human face. I had a deer face. I had both. I was a nightmare. I was a deer. And that, my friends, is the end of the story. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you are not too scared. I hope you are not driving alone at night on a dark and deserted road. I hope you are not seeing any deer with human faces. I hope you are not hearing any growls or laughs or screams. But if you are, don't worry. You are not alone. We are here. We are waiting. We are coming. We are the deer.
Hi guys, thank you so much for watching, and if you like my horror sounds, please make sure.
I was driving alone on a long and lonely road when I saw a sign for a gas station. I was running low on fuel, so I decided to stop and fill up my tank. I pulled into the station, but I noticed that there was no one around. The place looked deserted and dilapidated. The windows were broken, the pumps were rusty, and the lights were flickering. I got out of my car and walked towards the office, hoping to find someone who could help me. But as I approached the door, I heard a loud scream from inside. It sounded like a woman in pain. I froze in fear, wondering what was going on. I knocked on the door, but there was no answer. I tried to open it, but it was locked. I looked around and saw a key hanging from a hook on the wall. I grabbed it and inserted it into the lock. I turned it and heard a click. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. What I saw made me wish I never did. The office was a mess. There were papers and trash everywhere. The walls were stained with blood, and on the floor there was a body. It was a woman, or what was left of her. She was covered in wounds, and her eyes were wide open. She looked like she had been tortured and killed. But the worst part was, she was still moving. She was twitching and moaning, as if she was still alive. She looked at me, and I saw the terror in her eyes. She opened her mouth and said something that chilled me to the bone. "Help me, please, they're coming." Before I could react, I heard a loud bang from behind me. I turned around and saw another body. It was a man, wearing a gas station uniform. He had a shotgun in his hand and a hole in his head. He had shot himself, but he was also moving. He was getting up from the floor and pointing the gun at me. He had a twisted smile on his face, and he said something that made me want to run. "Welcome to hell, buddy." I realized then that I had stumbled into a nightmare. The gas station was haunted by the ghosts of the previous customers and workers who had been killed by a serial killer. And now, they wanted to kill me too. I ran back to my car, hoping to escape, but as I got in, I saw that the gas tank was empty. The pump had been broken, and it had drained all the fuel from my car. I was trapped. I looked around and saw that the ghosts were coming out of the office. They were all mutilated and angry. They had knives, axes, chains, and other weapons. They were coming for me. I locked the doors and tried to start the car. John was a dedicated travel blogger, exploring the world one adventure at a time and sharing his experiences with his online followers. He had embarked on a road trip through an unfamiliar countryside, aiming to uncover hidden gems for his next blog post. As he ventured deeper into the remote landscape, his GPS began to act erratically, displaying strange symbols and offering confusing directions. Curiosity drove him forward, but a sense of unease gnawed at him. Just as he considered turning back, an eerie message materialized on the GPS. "Continue at your peril." It was a warning he couldn't ignore, and he hesitated, debating whether to heed the ominous words. Before he could make a decision, his car's headlights flickered and the engine died, leaving him stranded on the desolate road. Panic washed over him as he tried unsuccessfully to restart the engine. Alone in the dark, John spotted a shadowy figure emerging from the dense woods nearby. It was a man, disheveled and weary, his face hidden beneath an unkempt beard. Despite his fear, John couldn't leave him stranded in the darkness. He opened the car door and stepped onto the deserted road. The mysterious man pointed at John's camera equipment and then to himself, as if trying to convey a message. John realized that his role as a travel blogger had brought him to this eerie encounter, and there was something the man wanted him to document. As the night grew colder and more surreal, John made the decision to follow the man into the woods, determined to uncover the reason behind this haunting encounter and help the lost traveler find his way home. Little did he know that his journey would lead him into a world where the boundaries between reality and the supernatural blurred, and his camera would capture the enigma of the lost traveler, forever etching their encounter into the annals of his blog. Thank you for listening to the Night Drive podcast. If you like this story, please leave a review and share it with your friends. And if you have any stories of your own that you want me to narrate, please send them to me at death@coattailsijmail.com. I would love to hear from you.